Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the HerStoryTV and the HerStory podcast. This is Getrude Matshe here in beautiful Melbourne, Australia. And today I am graced with the presence of yet another fascinating lady coming to us from the US. But before I start, let me acknowledge the traditional custodians of country throughout Australia and their connections to land, sea, and community. We pay our respects to their elders, past, present, and emerging, and extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people today. So please tell everybody your full name, where you're based, how old you are, and share your story with us today.
Hey, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. First, thank you, Gertrude, for the invitation. My name is Troya Butcher, and I am based out of the United States, Lancaster, in Pennsylvania. I am 53 years old, and I am a grief support specialist. And I think I'll take my glasses off because I'm getting a glare, so that might be better. So a really quick backstory. My backstory is in 2019, I wasn't always in this field of working with grieving people. I actually have my undergrad in computer science and my graduate degrees in project management. And I'm actually in finishing or starting another degree in grief. Is called Thanatology. And how I got to this work, again, 2019, I lost three very significant people in my life. My grandmother, my mentor, and my best friend all died within a 6-month span. And for the first time, I tell people all the time, I'm the daughter of a pastor. And we, of course, we knew death, of course, as the first family of the church. That we had several people that have passed on, and we went to their funerals and things of that nature. But I didn't understand what grieving truly was until, like I said, in 2019, when I had those significant deaths right behind each other. And what I felt was a lot different than any other deaths that I've experienced in my lifetime. And it was one that the last one being my best friend, when he passed away, it took me to a place that I didn't understand. And I had to take myself to therapy, because I did look for in my local church, because I am a preacher, I'm a minister as well. So I looked for that. I looked for help in our community. And what I found is that there was very little. I don't want to say that there wasn't any help. There was very little help that was given to those of us who were in this grief process, in helping us navigate or even have the proper language for grieving. And so as I began to come out of my pain and my hurt, I realized that I'm not going through this for myself. And if I'm feeling this way, truly there's somebody else out there who is feeling the same thing and not being able to have the support that they need. So that was when my organization, Just Troya LLC, was born. It was born out of the necessity of needing to give back and help the people that looked, feel, sounded like me, who didn't know what to do with their grief and their loss. In that process, I also I wrote a book to help me get through and understand the grieving process, and just to actually just help me to get through it, period. The name of that book was You Matter and So Does Your, no, it wasn't. It was called Soul Ties, Letters of Love. And that was just that. In order for me to get past the anger and the hurt, I decided to write letters to those who had passed on. And what I realized was that people are indelibly tied to our souls. I always draw now from my grandma, definitely draw from my mentor, and I absolutely draw things from my best friend. So fast forward to September of last year. I'm also a 10-year cancer survivor of thyroid cancer. and my doctor thought that my cancer had returned. So in the midst of doing this work that I do, I had to sit still and understand and go back through when they thought, like I said, they thought my cancer had returned. In the process, in my praying, in my just talking to God about really what's going on, because at the same time I'm raising 4 of my grandchildren. I have a busy life. It just hit me. It was like, Troya, you matter. You matter to me as you matter to your family. You matter as much as you're doing for everyone else and making sure that everyone else is okay. You matter, and you cannot pour from an empty jar. Meaning, I need you to sit still for a moment to get to be able to be rejuvenated, to have your spirit and your soul restored, in order to help the other people, which has been how my current campaign, the rest of my theme has finally come into fruition, which is you matter, and so does your grief. Because so often when you're in the throes of your grief, you forget. When you're in the throes of the loss, you forget who you are and that you're important to someone, and that you are that you matter. And so that's been our goal, from that day to now, and as we move forward, to remind everyone, to remind people that are going through loss, that you matter, and so does your grief, and to give them practical steps and practical tools to use to help them to get to the point where they're able to manage. I've learned in my studies that the grief never goes away, but as you continue to move through this grief journey, you'll be able to get your feelings out, get your emotions out, and begin to name and label what you're feeling. One of our mantras with the Just Troy, as well as the Good Grief Healing Center, which is my nonprofit side of my business, our mantra is the healing journey begins when you let it all out. And so often in our grief journey, we hold things in, particularly in the African American communities. We're just supposed to keep moving. But when we understand that there's more room out than there is in, that's when the real true work of your healing will begin. And that is what we're here for. We are here. That is a purpose that I was propelled into in 2019, and it's finally. I just began walking. I just began trusting. Again, I'm a Christian, and I just began trusting God for every step of the way, and I just moved into purpose. And I'm very grateful. I'm very grateful for this journey that I'm on now, because I've seen people become lighter, because grief can be very, very heavy, especially when you lose a person. But we understand that it's not just the death, the loss of a person. It's a loss of a person, place, or thing that we're emotionally attached to, right? And that is in COVID. If COVID has taught us nothing, it has taught us that we're all suffering this thing, and these feelings. And what are these feelings? They're feelings of loss. This feeling of loss actually has a name. It's called grief. And now that we're coming out of the pandemic, people are trying to figure out, well, what's the next move? What's the next step? And the next step is to acknowledge what you're feeling, acknowledge the pain, acknowledge the hurt, and release it. And don't allow yourself to get stuck, because grief can be just like, without a doubt, without like quicksand. And our job is to my job. I say our job. I have others who work with me in this field. Our job is to help others before the quicksand turns into cement and they're stuck in the grief. Now, mind you, I have a huge sledgehammer that I will use to help break up that cement of guilt, shame, hurt, pain, all of that, to get you to help them get to the other side. And there is another side to grief, and that's joy and happiness and acceptance, and remembering with love, and being able to live through the loss. So I'm really, really excited.
Wow. Well, I'll tell you, you have chosen a vocation at a very timely period in our lives as human beings. This pandemic has impacted and affected us in a very, very big way.
Mm-hmm.
Whether you're going to lose a friend, a family member to the coronavirus or not, it has really made us stop and think about life,
Mm-hmm.
frame where this is all going. And I can relate to everything you've said because I had just lost my father in 2018 before the pandemic started.
Mm-hmm.
Then I lost my mom in 2020. I lost
So
my
sorry for your loss.
mother-in-law 3 weeks apart. It was I don't even know how I got through 2020, to be honest. And you're right, we get stuck. We get so stuck in this sad place, and it's hard to move on and get out of it.
Mm-hmm.
So if there was somebody who's listening to this podcast right now who has just lost a loved one, is feeling stuck, has no idea how to get out, what 3 nuggets of wisdom would you give them? I'm going to share your website at the bottom of the screen. So if there's anybody who's interested in getting in touch with you, they have access to you as well. So give us 3 nuggets of wisdom on how to move on and get unstuck.
Well, the 3 things that, if there's 3, I will give 3. The first thing is acknowledging your pain. But the other part, well, I hope I can give 4, because we in our process of the You Matter and So Does Your Grief, what we have found what the concepts that we came up with is what we call the 4R approach. The 4R is in Romeo. That when you're going through the grieving, you're especially for somebody who passed away, right? You're always in the process of dealing with the funeral services, getting all these different things, and you don't have time to relax. You don't have time to, and once everything is done, then it's you're constant. Now you have this moment of now that everything's done, people have stopped calling. All of those things. So the first thing that I always tell people to do after you acknowledge your pain is to find that thing that makes you relax. That's something that's relaxing. And what we do, we play, if that's playing music, if that's sitting writing in a journal, if that's picking up the activity, but learn to relax. Learn to relax because, again, you want to start the process of freeing your heart and freeing your head. So relax. That's the first R. Excuse me. The second R that we talk about is releasing. When you're relaxed, you can begin to release those emotions and name those emotions. I have a little jar that I have beads in that when I tell the story all the time. When my grandmother passed away, I felt guilty because I didn't go see her the day before she passed away when she was still lucid. So the guilt. So when I did that, I picked up a little stone so that I don't beat myself up, and I say the feeling I'm feeling right now is I'm guilty. I feel guilty, and I put everything, all those emotions into that little stone, and I'm using my words. I'm using my language because it's very easy for me to say, because I was very angry when my best friend passed away. It was very easy for me to say the feeling, but not why I was feeling it. So you want that. So again, acknowledgement is a huge, huge, huge thing, because when you know what something is, you know how to heal it. And then again, once you release it, next thing you want to do is restore, because you just don't want to leave yourself open. You want to restore yourself. So that very same stone that I used to say I was guilty because I didn't go see my grandmom, I realized that one day, that 1 hour that I didn't do that did not negate the 50 years that I had with my grandmother. I was 50 when my grandmother passed away. That doesn't negate all of those years that I had. So I was able to now use that very same stone and say, you know what, I may have not been there or be able to go stop to see her the day before she died, where she can actually talk back and forth to me. However, I was in the room and she knew I was in the room, and she knew I was there when she passed away. Or I can say, you know what, she taught me how to cook. So and turn that negative thought into a positive feeling, that now I can begin to smile where it was causing me pain. I'm able to now smile because I'm beginning to acknowledge the hurt, and then once I'm acknowledging the hurt, then it can begin to become healed, and I can start healing. And again, that's the relax. I was able to relax to identify it. Then I was able to, then I released it, and then I restored it. And then I said there's 4 R's. The last R is repeat, because that's exactly what you're gonna have to do in this grief journey. Because again, like we said earlier, the grief never goes away, and there's always going to be something that's going to remind you of that thing or person that you have lost. And I mean, sometimes it's cyclical, sometimes it's not, and it's not always going to be ups and downs. But then you have I can remind myself, okay, Troy, this is what you're feeling. You need to slow down, relax, acknowledge what you're feeling, release it now. You felt it, now release it. Because again, more of a mouth than in, and then find that thing now that feeds your soul, and helps you to move, to continue to walk forward and not get stuck.
Wow. Yeah, you've really touched on a few nerves for me there, because I did feel a lot of guilt for not being with my mother when she passed. I wasn't even able to go to her funeral because of
Mm,
COVID. So I still
wow.
haven't seen where she's been buried. But you're right. If you go back to those memories of that person and the times that you did spend with them, I think that really helps. That really
Mm-hmm.
helps. So let's go back and learn a little bit about you. Not everybody is called to do this kind of work.
No,
You are the daughter of a minister, you said.
I am.
Take me right back to the beginning and do explain your name. When we met, the first thing that struck me was that you have such an unusual name.
Thank you. Excuse me, I'm so sorry. So yes, I am the daughter. Actually, I'm the daughter, the granddaughter, the niece, the cousin. We come from a long line of ministers. My father became a minister, I think, when I was 3. So the family joke is my sister has always been a preacher's kid. We kind of grew into being a preacher's kid. Um, Also, there's always a family story behind my first name, Troya. Again, everyone thought that I was named after my father, but of course, my father's name is Lewis, and there's no Troys in our family. So when we got old enough, we would ask the question, "What, mom, dad, where did my name come from?" And it was a family joke. They were on Omaha, Nebraska, when they first got married, and they saw my name on the side of a building, but they would never, ever, ever, ever tell me, right? And it wasn't until I was working in my 30s. I was working in Georgia at the time, and one of the guys called from Omaha, and I said, and after we finished talking about what we were doing and fixing the problem that he called in for, I said, "Hey, yeah, my name came from Omaha, Nebraska." He said, "Yeah, Troya's funeral home." I was like, "Wait, what?" And I tell the story. My parents hate it, but I called home. I was like, "Really, Dad?" I didn't say hello. I was like, "Really, Dad? A funeral home?" And then that's when the story came out that they were riding a bicycle one day, and they drove past this funeral home, and they saw the name Troya, and they said if they ever had a daughter, that's what they would name their daughter. And for those who know, like I said, I'm a minister. Jeremiah 1:5 says, "I knew you before you were in your mother's womb," or "I called you before you were in your mother's womb." And that story is so apropos. That scripture is so apropos for me, because my parents found the name when they first moved there. However, I wasn't the first kid. My brother came first. He's Lewis the third, and but my mom still would not. She held on to my name for another year and a half, because she just knew that I was coming. So she I guess God, she spoke it into, she spoke me into existence, because like I said, a year and a half later, here I was, and I did not know then. And when I found out the where my name came from, that 20 years later, just under 20 years later, that this would be the path I was supposed to be in.
Oh, wow. That's very fortuitous. It was just meant to be, really
Yes.
meant to be. Now, death has got an interesting way of waking us up to life.
Hmm.
You realize how fleeting this life is and how thin the veil is, too.
Right.
Just crossing over is like walking into the next room. And yet we feel invincible. We feel like we will live forever. If I could take you into your future now, and let's say you live to 120 with science being what it is, and you could have a conversation with the future you based on what life has taught you, what would you say to that wise woman?
Breathe, relax, um, just take one day at a time, and be mindful. And that's one thing I learned, after, like I said, after my best friend died. Take time to listen to people and let people know that you love them. And in the busyness of life, that it's okay to sit still. It's okay not to be busy with just being busy. Um, and that the life that was chosen, that God has chosen you to do, the things that God has chosen you to do, it may have been hard, but it was worth it. Like I mentioned, that I have and I would tell future me, continue. I mean, hopefully my grandchildren will be doing well. And I will have some great grandchildren, great grandchildren of my own. And I'll just be able to tell them that, yeah, it was hard, but it was every day was worth it.
Fantastic. What a beautiful way to end our segment. Thank you so much,
Thank
Troya, for
you.
coming online and sharing your nuggets of wisdom with us today. This is a topic that is needed at this moment in time. And I think the biggest take home is grief is an emotion. You have to sit with it for a while. I think the problem is that we try and move on too quickly. We try and push
Mhm.
it away. We try not to feel,
Right.
but allow it to consume you and then make a decision to release it.
Mhm. Allow yourself to break. It's okay. It's okay to break. It really is. And I had to learn that it's okay to break, because we're not Humpty Dumpty. All the king's horses and all the king's men are not going to put us back together again. But we will be able, once we acknowledge where we are, we will be able to be put back together again. We will be able to. Um, it won't be, when we're put back together, it won't be the same,
Hmm.
because something has changed in us, but we'll be stronger and better. Every time we take a breath, every time we take a step, we're pulling and taking all of those things or people with us, and they're pushing us to be the better. I stand here today because I listened to the words of my grandmothers. I listened to the words of my mentor. I listened to the words of my best friend, and I keep moving because they're moving with me. I take them with me every day of the week. They're with me, and I can say, "Oh, grandma would say this, or grandma would say that, or John would say this, or John would say that, or Rita would say." So that's it. That is the key, is that we allow ourselves to break, because at some point we will be able to be whole again.
Fantastic. Well, thank you to everybody who tuned in today to listen to this amazing interview. Have a
Yes, thank you.
fantastic day, morning, or evening, wherever you are in the world. And Troya, thanks again for the interview.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
Bye for now, everybody.
Good night. Good morning.